I wanted to talk today about self-forgiveness. Is this okay? You know, we're talking all the time about forgiveness, and my thoughts about it are this. If we have pain inside of us, stuck from different times in our life that we're not aware of, as you just spoke about, you just touched on, then we're in reaction to things all the time, and we're always being asked to forgive. We're always being told, oh, you should forgive so-and-so. Oh, you should forgive so-and-so. Well, I think that forgiveness is very important, but most of the time we don't remember to forgive ourselves for our own judgments, for our own misunderstandings of information, and our reaction to it. And I don't know about you, but I personally can get pretty hard on myself. I can get pretty critical with myself. And so if I don't start with forgiving me and how I'm being with myself, how can I possibly change my own consciousness to raise it up a notch or two, to be mindful of other people and tell them, well, you should forgive, and you should forgive, and I should forgive. And I caught myself twice this week using phrases I don't normally do, which are slightly demeaning to me. Now, the first one was in class, and my colleague caught it. I made a comment about myself being a crybaby, and the tone of it was a little derogatory. I could have said, well, you know, I get emotional pretty easily. I said, you know, I'm such a big crybaby. And after we were through, she said, do you mind if I say something to you? I personally didn't care for the way you spoke about yourself. I thanked her for caring enough about me to point that out, because I would not normally speak to myself or about myself in that manner. Jeannie's walking in. Bruce and Jeannie and I were chatting. I made a comment when she said something about voices, and I think Jane was asking us to quiet down. I said, oh, that must have been the voices of something about me. You're talking about me being loud or something. And again, I heard it, and I said to Jeannie, oh my God, I just did that. I just spoke in a derogatory tone about myself. So if I can that unconsciously speak in a derogatory way about myself, how often can I be out in the world making a derogatory statement and being unconscious of it? I'm not proud of that when I'm not kind to myself. I'm not proud when I show the human side of me being negative to myself and then telling you not to do it. But if I have that piece of me that I have to keep working on how I be with me, well then of course, if I've got stuff on me, it's going to show up in your face, in your face, in your face, in your face, because we're mirrors of one another. And whatever issues we have that trigger us and make us sort of go, whoa, are things that are hurt and pain within ourselves. The fact that you caught yourself, Jane, being sucked down the rabbit hole and saying, oh boy, no, can't do this rodeo, I gotta go. I got to tell you, that's huge for someone to do, to just say, I can't do it. And I just want you to remember, you've all gone through times in history with things that you rose above and were proud of, because that was about choice. So we have an opportunity to have choice about how do we start being with ourselves. And when we start to work on ourselves, you see, that's what I took both those letters to be about. The only way we can be part of any solution is when we go inward to see the nooks and crannies on where we are holding others in a less than loving way. And when we can address that within our own closets, we can then make the change within our own consciousness with ourselves to be more mindful, respectful, and courteous of how we are with other people. But if we're not willing to do it with ourselves, how can we really, in full love and heart, know how to do it with others? How do we do it with others? And if we're more willing to be loving and kind to others and not ourselves, then I want to ask, what is it about us that we don't think is deserving of that same love, dignity, and respect? So I saw something. I still love social media for certain little things, but I promised myself I was going to have to start turning it off because, as Bruce had spoken about, we're not getting the whole story. And then there's a barrage of backlash of crazy that I was getting sucked into, and I thought, oh, this is not helping me be part of a solution. And for us to say, oh, we're white folks and we're older and it doesn't affect us, if that's how we see ourselves as white folks that are older, that doesn't affect us, that's part of where the problem already is again. Because we get to take what we remembered already living through in the 50s, 60s, and 70s and say, no, if we've worked towards merging and seeing a oneness, but uniqueness, Carol and I are different. Noni and I are different. Bruce, Jane, we're different. But yet there's still commonality that we have. What's it going to take for us to see that part of each person? I watched an old movie the other day, Hairspray, and I loved it because it showed the whole segregation issue going on the television dance show, and it shows a woman fearful walking through a neighborhood. Don't hurt me, don't hurt me. And they're all laughing at her because they're not even paying attention to her. So I just thought, if we still have knee-jerk triggers that just spin us out of control, we have to start working on those. So I want to read this to you. It's called Check Yourself. I loved the title because that for me is always, I got to go check me. How am I being? Especially if I'm attracting my own negativity and speaking in a negative way about me, I got to go inside and see where it's coming from. So check yourself. Sometimes you are a toxic person. Sometimes you are a mean, negative person. You're looking to push away. Sometimes the problem is you. And that doesn't make you less worthy. Keep on growing. Keep on motivating yourself. Check yourself, which means check in. Check in with yourself. Mistakes are opportunities. Look at them. Own them. Grow from them. And move on. Do better. Be better. You're human. It's okay. And that's why I started looking at that part of me that said, when I check myself, I get to remember to be forgiving to me on the times I miss the mark, on the times I'm critical and judgmental to myself, because that means I'm not being loving. And if we say we're about a world that works for everybody, it's got to start at home. So each one of you, take what you're feeling. Take what you're feeling and look at it and ask yourself, is there a gift in this that I'm to understand and know more about? Is there a gift, some part of me that's already been an activist in some way, that instead of surrendering to, I'm old, I'm white, it doesn't matter, we're all the bridges that matter. We're all the bridges that create the connectivity, the understanding, and the lack of judgment immediately. And then ask yourself, what's it going to take for me to stop being that harsh and judgmental to myself? And if you don't find yourself being judgmental to you, more power to you. But I know that I sometimes fall into that hole. And that means I'm not being kind and nurturing and God-loving to myself. I've got nothing else to give if the well within me is empty. I can't be part of any solutions, any changes, until I constantly monitor and check in. How am I being with me? So I wanted this to be about self-forgiveness, because we often don't realize. Jane had even mentioned a few different situations where each one of us can think about an event in our life where we're still harboring something that we weren't aware of that winds up being toxic out in the world. We get to look at it. And those letters are asking us to go inside and ask, where do we need to be part of the change within ourselves to be out in the world and still be part of that change to another? So let's take a moment and go inward. Go inward to the knowing and the understanding that we are God's beloved children. Each one of us, no matter what we look like, what our age is, what demographic we came from, we are God's beloved children. And as the beloveds, we are here to demonstrate, to emulate the magnificence that we are, mirroring that which is the God within us to others. We are here to model that loving presence so that others have a reference of what it's supposed to look like. We are so willing to be loving to others. Let us be that joyousness to ourselves as we are God's children. And knowing that God is present in and through absolutely everything, everywhere, at all times, we know we are filled up and overflowing with that God essence in ourselves. So as we anchor in, as we tap in, as we access that of which we are good, loving, and kind, we allow our vibrational energy to raise up, to continue, to raise our own consciousness, to raise our own vibrations, to raise our own connectivity to one another, and to see one another as our brothers and sisters of the beloved. And to know that whatever frightens us, scares us, nurtures us, sustains us, is the same for each and every one of us. For we are all interconnected. Let us remember that. And as we remember that, let us come together in a willingness to see what we have to learn from one another and to see what we already have in common with one another, so that we have room to dialogue with one another. Because we can solve so many things by just being willing to sit and be present with one another. Let us use our words and be mindful of them to solve problems and to continue to show that God presence within us is guiding us, is nurturing us, and is showing us a way, perhaps a new way, perhaps a different way, to be loving kindness. So I'm grateful that we each day have a new moment, a new opportunity to think about how we can be, and that we can re-choose and re-choose throughout the day to continue to be on point, checking in with ourselves on how to be. I'm so thankful for our willingness to say, no more of our past remembrances, no more repeating history in a negative way, that we are equally part of every solution by our beingness, by our presence, by our bigness, and our commitment to being the holy ones, each and every one of us. So as I release this truth, as I know it and understand it, to the law, I know God has got it, and solutions are being made avail. God's got it, and I let that be. If any of this anchors with you, please say with me, and so it is. Thank you.